where you have an information advantage is the scars and the scar tissue that you have earned in a space. Hire the best people and have humility that you're not the smartest person in the room, and go find the best people.
Welcome to Decision Points, and welcome Richard Dix, founder and chairman of Winchester Carlisle Companies. Richard?
Thank you for having me.
Yeah, so glad you're here. We've known each other a long time, or known of each other a long time. We were at Baylor together, 1 year apart, closing in on like 40 years ago.
I know. Wow.
It's hard to believe that that we've been out of school that long.
I know. You've held up better than I have, so congratulations on that.
I've been told that, but I'm trying. I mean, I'm just, we're all trying to hold it together as we go down the path.
No doubt.
My earliest memory of you, I think this is right, but this is appropriate for today's conversation, but my earliest memory was you had a company at Baylor, a little business that you started.
That's right.
Called, I don't know what you called it, but it was the Durags.
It was called Durags.
Okay. Yeah. Tell us about Durags.
So it was a project that we had in our entrepreneurship class. Me and another gentleman, Alan Wills, who was my co-founder. And we started off, we graduated from school, everyone else is getting jobs, and we had this idea that we had been germinating in our senior year, and we said, hey, what a perfect time. We had nothing else to lose because we had nothing, and we started making bandanas, basically, and the whole tagline was, it was no tricky folding. So we took a bandana, very innovative, cut it in half, sewed it, and we did all these crazy patterns. And so we started getting momentum with that. Ultimately, we became a NFL licensee through Zubaz.
Oh, wow.
We became the U.S. snowboarding sponsor for the Olympics because we ended up going into all these crazy ski hats. So before everyone wore helmets, you went out on the slopes, a lot of kids and adults were wearing these wacky hats. And the majority of those hats that you saw on the slopes at that point in time, we made and designed. And ultimately, I sold that company 5 years later to Alan, and he ran that. I think they finally stopped manufacturing in the last 3 years.
Wow.
So he converted that into helmet covers and all sorts of other things.
Interesting.
But what a great life experience.
Well, I just remember, the Durags on campus, and I guess, Baylor was probably your first market, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah. And
for sure.
And then, I just remember hearing about this guy, Richard Dix, who had started this little company. So that was that your first entrepreneurial endeavor?
No, I was really blessed with some parents that kind of were always encouraging that behavior. Even though my dad was always a corporate guy, my mother was a stay-at-home mom. And, I remember my dad, at one point I had this idea, I was mowing lawns and I was going to make this lawnmower and weed eater into one product.
Mm-hmm.
And so my dad's like, great. So we went and bought a cheap lawnmower and I started messing with it. That one never went anywhere. And then when I was in college, I started making a calculator for the homebuilding business, which ultimately I ended up getting into and what I've been doing for the last, 20 plus years.
Mm-hmm.
But always, so when I actually went to high school in Singapore. So my dad worked for Texas Instruments and we moved to Singapore. And so
that explains the calculator.
So when I would go back, my dad was like, hey, I'm going to go to Taiwan, and if you want to go meet with the manufacturer, go meet with the manufacturer. Mm-hmm. So I would tag along. So it was just always encouraging this kind of creative thinking, and so it felt very natural for me when I graduated from college to take that step to try to become an entrepreneur.
Interesting. So let's go back. So you grew up where primarily? Obviously Singapore for a few years.
Yeah, so primarily South Texas we started in. My parents, even when we lived in the Dallas area, we lived in a little town called Nevada, which the closest big town to that was Farmersville. And my dad would drive an hour plus into Richardson every day. So living in the country was always a very important part of our childhood. So we always had a couple of horses, a few cattle. We always were doing FFA and all that sort of stuff. And so we were always exposed to that. And then literally my dad, end of my sophomore year, came in and said, hey, my brother had already graduated, and said, hey, what do you think about moving to Singapore? And so I said, sounds like a fun
Sounds
adventure.
good.
Sounds good. Not knowing what we were getting into.
Yeah.
And get on a plane, and next thing you know, we moved to one of the largest cities in Asia, and
Wow.
and really transformative experience for me.
What was that like?
Scott, I think
Because you were still in Nevada.
Oh, absolutely. A small town kid.
Yeah.
And I think kind of two things that it did for me. Number one, it taught me that really all people are the same. They may look different. They may come from different places, but they really are all the same. And so it really opened my eyes up to that. And so when we started Durags, for example, for me to say, hey, we should go manufacture our product in China, was not like an uncomfortable thing, because I was like, oh, well, that's how the world works.
Yeah.
And so I got to see really how things operate, and it just broadened my perspective. And the other thing it did, and I'll never forget this, we were always raised Southern Baptist, and one of the class requirements was that we have to take a religion class on the world's religions. And so coming from that very small town Southern Baptist, which I suspect a lot of folks can relate to, and understanding just how similar the base of all religions are.
Right.
So again, it kind of amplified that feeling that I've had, and what I've tried to teach to my kids, and the way I try to live my life, that we're all trying to get to the same goal.
That's right.
And that was really powerful for me.
So were you 2 years in school?
2
in
years
Singapore?
there. That's right.
And then were you in an international school with
So it was an American. So it was a Singapore American school. And one of the key things that was part of that education was we had an interim semester trip that we had to take every year. So the school shut down for 2 weeks. And you had an option. You had some things you could do locally, but most of the kids would travel internationally. So my junior year, the one that I picked was we went to Nepal. Oh, wow. So I went to Nepal and trekked around the Himalayas and the base camp and all of that with my fellow students and my math teacher. And so before that, I wasn't really a math kid.
Yeah.
But then spending that 2 weeks, number one, of course, you can imagine opening your eyes to the world.
Yeah.
But then also building that relationship with that teacher really changed kind of the course of my life, where I started, finding math interesting, and it was just really powerful. And then the other trip I got to do was Australia. So that my senior year, we did 2 weeks in Australia. So kind of that culmination of those experiences 100% changed, why I'm here today and my views of the world.
And so what would you say, and then you end up coming back to Baylor, right?
So I started at Southwest Texas.
Okay.
So a little interesting side note, my dad graduated from college when he was in his early 30s. He was the first person on both sides of the family to go to college.
Okay.
So I ended up being the second person to complete college on all sides of my family.
Wow.
And so I started off at Southwest Texas because we lived in Singapore. My parents really didn't understand how the college things work. So my brother lived in Austin, and so we talked. I'm like, UT probably couldn't have gotten in anyway, truthfully. But they said, okay, your brother lives in Austin, so try Southwest Texas now, Texas State. And my mother knew someone that went to Kilgore Junior College. So I applied to those two schools, got in, and started at Southwest. And so I was there for 2 years, ended up meeting a friend who's still one of my best friends today, who was actually from Germany, and his family was from Peru. And we were fraternity brothers. We were Phi Delts there. And so we were sitting there talking, kind of like Southwest, good school, but kind of wanted more. And so we, one weekend, we decided we're going to drive and go look at SMU. So we're like, SMU is supposed to be great, Dallas, cool town. And so we're talking, and they were like, well, you know what? Along the way's Waco, and we hear Baylor's pretty good too. So two kids, I hadn't even talked to my parents, by the way, at this point. And so we hop in the car, we go to Baylor. We get there on a Friday. It was during the summer school, and we're walking around like, oh, this is kind of cool. We walk into the administration's office, happened to be whoever was responsible for admissions, like, oh, come on in, boys, let's talk. We sit there, talk to him for an hour, and we go, we think we might like Waco. And so we ended up staying the night there. fell in love with Waco, and next thing, we never even made it to Dallas. So literally spent the weekend at Baylor, turned around, went back to Southwest, filled out the thing in on paper, applied, and we both got in, and then we were college roommates all the way through.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
And so then were you there 2 more years?
Two more years.
Okay.
And then met my wife Jennifer there.
Yeah.
We'll celebrate 32 years this year.
Congratulations. Yeah, that's awesome. I didn't realize you had transferred in, so that's pretty cool.
Yeah.
All right, so I want to go back to one thing you said earlier. Your dad, corporate TI guy, I'm guessing 30, 40 years.
Yeah.
Always with TI.
Yeah, long career there.
And then your
did
mom,
a bunch of other things, but mainly TI.
And you said your mom was
my mom stay-at-home mom. So my mom worked sometimes in doctor's offices, but primarily was a stay-at-home mom.
Okay, so I think it's interesting that your dad encouraged you down this entrepreneurial path, even though he was a corporate guy.
Absolutely.
Where do you think that came from?
It's such an interesting question because my brother, is my best friend except for my wife, and I talk to him every day multiple times, he's an entrepreneur as well, and we often talk about that because we had no other examples of entrepreneurs in our lives. And my dad and my mom are the most risk-averse people on the planet. They are just right in the middle of the fairway. And I don't really know. We've talked often about that. I think what they instilled in us was a desire to continue to learn, exposure to things that were very different. Our family grew up very, very modest ways, and everything we did, all my cousins and all the people that I spent my life with, and none of them ended up being entrepreneurs.
Yeah.
And so, we ultimately, we, my brother and I specifically wanted something different. And I saw, the life that we had, which was amazing and filled with great love, but had more ambition and curiosity. And so I was always a sports kid. And, even though I was, 5 foot nothing and weighed 100 pounds wet, I was always very competitive in sports. And so kind of that combination of just a lot of positive people in my life really shaped me into this desire that I want to go, make a difference and try to make money differently.
A lot of credit to your mom and dad, because I think, a lot of moms and dads in their situation would say, well, you need to follow the corporate path that I've followed because, it's safe and it's secure and, I've been successful and, versus saying, go figure it out.
It was, my brother and I truly felt this way when I decided, I had $2,000 to my name from working through college. And when we started Durags, and I remember that I always had this feeling that if I fell flat on my face, that I could always go home and then kind of reset.
Sure.
I don't know how true that was. Thank God I never had to do that. But that was the feeling that I had. That I felt like I always had the supporting, loving family that was there. And what's interesting, to this day, Jennifer's got a PhD, so her and I went through the full educational program, and our kids have and are. But really, when we look across the landscape, and I've got now my brother's kids, and they're very successful. My brother's a very successful entrepreneur. None of them have chosen to go to college. You think about on both sides of our families, it's not small family, that they have not gone on that path. And many of them are still, kind of doing similar sort of things. Great people that, work their tail off, but didn't go down that educational path.
Right. Yeah. So important for sure.
Yeah.
All right. So how did you and Jennifer meet?
So this college roommate, he was taking a year longer to get through school. He'd changed degrees. And so I'd gotten out in my 4 years. And so I went back to see him. So Alan and I moved to Austin because we wanted to be in a hipper place because,
of course,
Waco not knowing for its cool
hipper.
Definitely a lot hipper today. And so we decided to move to Austin to continue starting this. And so I went back to see Christian one weekend to have some fun, and Jennifer lived like 3 doors down from Christian. And we met, and then we started, dating long distance. And so what's interesting, though, after her and I started dating for about 6 months, we relocated the company back to Waco.
Oh, you did?
I did.
You're like, this is not working.
This work thing's fun, but this is more important. And so we relocated the company back there, and then we dated all the way. She's 2-3 years younger than I am, and so then when she graduated, then we we tied the knot. Actually, we got married, believe it or not, Scott. This will be it's a funny side story. So we had a wedding planned post-graduation, and we had all the details set up. And I'm like, I'm so done with this stuff. Like, I'm done with all the parties, everything else. So Alan and I are sitting on a Friday afternoon at lunch. Maybe at like Oso Burrito or something. And I'm like, we're talking. I'm like, man, I'm so done with all this. And so we decided, I'm like, well, if I'm going to get married, and I don't want to go through all this, I need to do this weekend. So I arranged a limo. I arranged flights. I pick up her dress. I show up to her apartment on a Friday afternoon in a limo, convince her to hop in with me, grab the ring, and we flew to Vegas. Didn't tell anyone, and got married. And so there you go. And called our parents afterwards.
So did you go forward with any of the plans that you had?
We still had the big party. We didn't do, so we did the post-wedding party. We did all the other fun stuff. But
how upset were her parents at you for her off to Vegas?
As you could imagine, it's so funny. So I got this cool place at the Desert Inn, if you could imagine. Like, I had all, a hot tub and big suite. And then we go, and I've got her dress, and she's getting her makeup done. We go to this little chapel. She was Methodist, so we wanted to do the unity candle. So, this guy's like pulling out the Bic to light the unity candle. And we get married. We go after. They're like, how many photos do you want? And we're like, well, what kind of package do you have?
We can afford 5.
Yeah, we can afford 5. And they're like, how will you pay it? I'm like, Visa. And I'm like, please go through. So we call our parents, and Jennifer calls, or I call my mom, and literally my mom, Jennifer can hear on the other side of the room, my mom goes, tell the new Mrs. Dix I love her. And she's like, howling. I mean, hilarious. And then Jennifer's mother, God, so funny. She calls her mom, and she says, hey, guess where we are? And we had told her mom that because we were supposed to go to my parents for that weekend. And she goes, you're at Penny and Larry's. And Jennifer goes, no, I'm in Vegas. And her mother goes, you're married. And she goes, I am. And she goes, and you're pregnant. Which she wasn't. That is like one mom like, oh no. The other's like, you're pregnant.
That's hilarious.
Anyway,
that's
just funny. So classic.
Yeah. So that's very entrepreneurial of you too, right? Just kind of like, all right, let's just go.
Let's get this done.
Let's get it done.
So
that's great. All right. So you graduate from Baylor. You do the Durag thing for 5 years?
5 years, yeah.
Okay, so that's full-time,
100%, yeah.
And you guys are working it and...
Working hard, traveling all over the world. At that point, like when it kind of, by year 3, we had distribution all over the world. We were, I'm going to Tokyo and going to Germany and trade shows all over the country. We started off, we were doing our own manufacturing, then we shifted that manufacturing to China. And, we got the U.S. snowboarding team. And so the business was really growing. And ultimately, just for me, I'm like, I can't see the next phase of this. Like, I wasn't going to be in the clothing business,
right?
And so that's when I said Alan and I agreed that I was selling to him, and then I went on to
any regrets on that.
Not. I mean, I don't really look at life through the lens of regrets.
Yeah.
It's all through different learnings. It was a very good part of my life. Loved living in Waco, but the rest of it's been such a fun run.
Yeah.
So
it was just time to move on.
It was,
and you knew that,
and I knew that, and I had a yearning for kind of more than what maybe Waco could offer us.
And you and Jennifer are now married at this point.
We are married. Yep, okay. Married. And so then from there I started. I went into the truck stop and convenience store business. This is when NAFTA was kind of starting to develop. Right. And so I went and developed my first truck stop, and then was partnering on convenience stores, and which was a fascinating business. But what was going on at the time, there were 2 trends that were unanticipated. Number one, this was before grocery stores like Walmart were getting into that business, and H-E-B and others. And then also a large portion of that, it's much more corporate today, but there were a lot of competitors that were owned by, people that had just moved in the country, and so they were operating at a much lower cost of labor because it was a family would come in and do that, which was great and life-changing for them. So we had two factors that were hitting us very quickly. So when you get in that business, historically, you would make, kind of 10 to 12 cents a gallon on everything you were doing. So you go in, you put in, the dispensers, and you got a bunch of infrastructure, but it paid itself pretty quickly at 10 cents a gallon. Well, once Walmart and H-E-B and Kroger got into that business, they would start selling gas as a loss leader.
Yeah.
And so it really impacted that margin. Then you had to then expand your offering. So when I did the first truck stop, we were one of the first folks in the country to do what was called co-branding at the time, which now is common practice.
Right.
So it was a very innovative. So we had Subway, TCB yogurt, we had a full a diner associated with it. And so it was really getting momentum. And then it was very quickly when that first Walmart opened up and that first Kroger, how quick the margins got. So we learned a lot, got out of the business, sold it. It was a very positive transaction, but really figured out that was not a space that I wanted to play in long term, and really was also kind of my first foray really into real estate and understanding that and zoning and all the things that we do today.
Yeah. So then what was next?
So then I got a job, was really my first corporate job. I went and worked. became COO.
Like you said that.
Yeah.
Got a job.
I got a job.
Yeah.
And was a great opportunity. I became COO of a NASDAQ public company based out of Houston, and they were in the convenience store and gas distribution business.
Okay.
And so it was great. I learned so much. So, I'm sitting there with auditors and going through the public process and going through 10Ks and 10Qs and 8Ks and, getting on, CNN and talking about our stock and doing all these really incredible things. And really was a transformative opportunity for me. Then I had that entrepreneurial itch which started scratching again, and that's when the .com boom was starting to really go. We were in Houston, so I left the company. We adopted our son, Nate, while we lived in Houston, and then went down this technology play. We had lots of momentum, was starting to acquire a bunch of companies, and then we were going public through a reverse merger in April of 2000. So the market crashed in early 2000. So a lot of things learned through that process. Number one, I had a lot of money on paper, which is not the same as having it in the bank account. And then also just understood that market forces, doesn't matter how good you are.
Right.
And they're very humbling. I really got very informed about finance at another level. Yeah. In capital and raising capital and the reporting and all the things involved in that. And so really went from, had made a fair amount of money, made a lot more actually when I was in the public game. And then I parlayed all that money into this venture and basically went to zero. Yeah. And so at that point I had to go get another job. And so truly by the grace of God, I ended up landing a job with General Motors. I was the director of business development strategy for GM for technology globally. And so we relocated my wife and my little son at the time to Detroit, Michigan. Okay. And it was an incredible experience. So traveled the world. I was doing, very large deals, coming up with new business ideas and, selling that to the senior leadership within General Motors, and lots of stories that I could tell in that venture or that time of my life. But it was a lot of fun. And really, time I was the youngest director within General Motors, and just getting exposed to really complex global business. And it really changed the way I look at process. And so when I was a young entrepreneur, and even when I was running the COO of the public company, I didn't appreciate the importance of process like I did at General Motors, because one thing that we talk about a lot today is geographic expansion. Sounds really fun and it's very ego enhancing, and we're doing business here and there. And I think entrepreneurs often miscalculate the complication. As we talk about, it's not a 1-to-1,
right?
It's a 1-to-5,
right?
And then you go further, it's a 1-to-10, and then it's a 1-to-20, and then you start thinking globally. You don't see a problem. You have to have infrastructure, process, and people that allow you to manage that risk very differently than when you can go, walk and look at your problem tomorrow. You can see it. You can touch that customer.
Yeah.
And so that really opened my eyes up to the importance of having that and building that in a business. And so as we think about today, as we're in the businesses we're in, and we think about new businesses, one of the things that we start in and I invest in is infrastructure and process before all the pretty sexy stuff.
Yeah.
Most entrepreneurs, not most, a lot of entrepreneurs think about brand image, and I need to get my logo right, and I need to get all of these things in place. And now we think about, hey, we need to spend, X dollars on people, process, burning those in, and then we'll start walking, right? Which is a very different capital investment, but it's critical to ensuring, or I say mitigate risks that you don't know what's going to come.
Yeah, for sure.
That's the other thing that gray hair teaches you.
That's right. So we've gone from Durags to convenience stores to a job.
Yep.
With a public company in the convenience space.
That's right.
Yes. To .com tech venture to now GM.
Yep.
And then next, what is Pulte next?
So next is Pulte. So
by the way, they're like pretty diverse smattering of different kinds of entrepreneurial.
Yeah, and I think I enjoy learning so much, and I tend to be able to kind of learn. I can absorb a lot of information. That's kind of a gift I have.
Yeah,
and so it allows me to get deep into stuff. And I think it's been a good thing, but it's also very humbling. Like thinking that's sometimes is overconfidence.
Yeah.
Right. And I've recognized that. So, today when I'm thinking about new things, I'm very focused on staying in my lane.
Yeah.
Because where you have an information advantage is the scars and the scar tissue that you have earned in a space.
Right.
Right. And so I'm very focused on that as a keen investment thesis that we have today.
Yeah, that's right.
And so, but yeah, so at the time, one of my colleagues at General Motors was approached by a recruiter, and Pulte Homes is always Bill Pulte, and that organization has always been very innovative within the home building space. And so Bill at the time and the senior leader CEO Richard Duga had said, hey, we're starting to see potentially a talent gap form within our industry with people that have grown up in this industry but may not have different experiences, or they're aging out. And so they decided they were creating a program called Emerging Leaders within General Motors. And so my friend said, hey, Richard, I'm applying for this job. Maybe you should throw your name in the hat. And I was like, okay. And kind of as I understood at the time, and still today, really the big home builders back then more than they do today really had a good balance between entrepreneurial spirit. So they would let you run a division within a box kind of deal. And so they were kind of providing capital, but gave you the tools you needed to build your business. So kind of a division back, when I got in, they gave you a lot of runway to do things within a thesis. So I was one of 9 people they picked from across the country to get into that program.
And this was at Pulte?
This was at Pulte,
okay.
Which was based out of Detroit. So they were headquarters at the time. They were based out of Bloomfield, Michigan. And so it was supposed to be a 2-year program, and then 2 years they would put you into kind of a VP role, and they would kind of grow you. And so I got into this program, and I was, grinding 7 days a week. And I mean, literally, I would do like on the weekends I would go, and instead of saying, hey, I'm in the construction time, I'd throw on the suit and I'd work with the sales guys. I'm trying to learn. So I'm just absorbing everything I possibly could. And so, what was supposed to be a 2-year program, they quickly moved me to Philadelphia. I was in the program at that point, maybe 4 months. so they moved me to Philly with the idea that potentially the person running at that time, they were looking at potentially making a change, which, in hindsight made no sense. This guy was an incredible operator, but probably wasn't the most political guy, but was like one of the best in the business. So anyway, so they put me there. They relocate Jennifer and I. At this point, Gracie had been born. We adopted Gracie. So we had our 2 kids, and we relocate to Philly. And so that was actually, I think, within maybe 90 days of being in the program. But anyway, so I go there. I start learning that business, that market, focused on attached products specifically. Very different market to operate. Old school, the way you buy land, a lot of environmental issues, kind of a union sort of deal we had to deal with. And so I was there for 6 months, and then they said, okay, we got an opportunity. We want to move you to Dallas, which at the time I think was the 2nd or 3rd largest operations in the company. So at that point, I had been in home building for less than 9 months, and learning at a rapid pace. And so then they relocate us to Texas, back to Dallas, or to Dallas. And
where's Jennifer from, by the way?
Jennifer's from Little Rock.
Okay.
So we come here, and I run the DFW business. Brought in Del Webb. Pulte had bought Del Webb, so we did the deal in Frisco, which was the largest deal at that time, and we were the deal of the year for Dallas business, blah blah blah, all those sort of things. Was again kind of learning quickly, and so I was in DFW for probably 2.5 years, and then they moved me to the Vegas market, which at the time was the largest operation. Invested capital, we had about $1 billion invested. Pulte had $1 billion invested in that operation, and I was running the Mountain West, which included the Colorado operations. And we were, kind of put that in perspective, we were building, probably north of 5,000 homes a year within my operations. And that was more units than Toll Brothers was building nationally.
Wow.
So, I mean, it was a very efficient, very well run, not anything I had done. I had been blessed to be able to, get the honor to run that business, and steward that through. And so then the Great Recession started hitting. And when I had went there, I had committed to be there for 2 years because I wasn't going to raise. Jennifer and I agreed we weren't raising our children there, even though great dynamic market. I can't say enough nice things about the people there and the business climate of Las Vegas, specifically to real estate. It's there's kind of 2 industries there. You're either in gaming or you're in real estate.
Right.
So it was a, very highly recognized business there. And so when that happened, when the Great Recession started, Richard Duga, the time CEO, said, "Hey, Richard, I need you to stay in that Vegas market for we don't know how long."
Right.
And so Jennifer and I talked, and I said, "Richard, I can't." It wasn't from a business reason. It was truly from a family reason. We just couldn't, even though our kids went to like this incredible private school, they really do a good job there. But we just said, when you're having to go to the movie theater through the slot machines, we just didn't feel like that was a place that really aligned with our kind of long-term family values. And so I gave the company, I think it was 4 or 5 months worth of notice for them to start transitioning me out. And then I came, literally Jennifer and I loaded our house up because you couldn't sell a house at that point. So this was literally the beginning of 2008. So Vegas was an epicenter. Vegas and Phoenix were really challenging times. And so we literally loaded our stuff up and our kids in a Ryder truck, and we rented an apartment in Highland Park. And I started Winchester Carlisle out of my house there. And, kind of the rest we've been doing now for 17 years with that deal. And, that really... and the one thing I think that's important to say, that is when not that I didn't already know because we'd been married a long time, but I have and had a great partner. And you've lived in this community. Like when you leave this community and then you go back and then you show up in a Ryder truck and say, "Hey, we're starting a new business." That's not an easy pill to swallow. And having a partner that has been with me every step of the way.
Yeah.
Mission critical to, why I'm here today.
Yeah. Well, I think like every entrepreneur in their journey has highs and lows.
Yeah, for sure.
And everybody goes through a difficult season, and it tests it tests you in terms of, am I going to get back up and keep going? And it sounds like you had, with the .com scenario, that was one of those seasons of testing. And then this one really, another one, although this one you made the choice, it was kind of your decision to leave Pulte. You could have stayed and probably continued to have a very good career there.
Yeah.
The .com a little less, that was more of a, external forces.
Right.
But where did you, clearly Jennifer was part of the resolve, but where did you find like the fortitude to just keep going? Yeah. To like pick it up.
Yeah.
Like, you know what, I got this and we're going to figure it out. And where does that come from?
Well, when success is your only option, and having a family and responsibility and I don't even know that I like the word pride, because I don't look at pride as a positive, but just having the desire to go on. And I think it, honestly, Scott, it was kind of burned into me at a very young age. Being kind of the smallest kid in sports, you always just having to, be meaner, be hit harder, get up faster, be faster, work longer, put in the more effort to overcome those. Same with school. School never came easy to me. And so it was just always kind of just, that sort of, and getting to the other side of that is I think really where it came from.
Yeah.
And again, kind of going back to knowing you got family that's there. So, at that point in my life, I never thought, hey, I'm going to move back to my parents.
Right.
But I never was worried about it impacting my marriage.
Yeah.
And that is I don't know that a lot of people can say that with true, commitment and fortitude. And I've been able to have that throughout my whole life. And I've had my brother there and my parents, but have always just had a really great nucleus of people that I think have valued me for what I am or who I am, as opposed to what maybe I may have on the surface and what I can bring to the table from a, maybe from a financial perspective. And I think all those things have helped me. But there's been lots of doubt. There's a lot of long nights of, tossing and turning, but, you just got to kind of push through that.
Yeah, I think like your family oftentimes can be such a great motivator because, you want to, perform's not the right word, but you want to perform for them.
Absolutely.
You want to provide for them. That's a better word. You want to provide. And, you at an early age, said, I want more. I want more from, more than Southwest Texas or Texas State, like nothing wrong with that, but you wanted to move to Baylor. And then, when you did the Durag thing, it was successful, but you wanted more. And like, that desire to continue to grow and push. And then at the same time, provide an incredible example for your children. Right. We went through a difficult season at True North and kind of the, call it like 2012 to 2017. And during that time, one of the great motivators for me was like, okay, I've just got to get up every day and model for my children what it looks like to work hard and to grind and to push through. And I don't know all the answers. I don't have all the answers. I don't know all the outcomes, but I'm going to at least model for them what it looks like to get up and work hard every day.
Yeah, it's so important.
Yeah.
It's so important. And I think, now I enjoy the grind and complexity of it. And we do try to, model that for our kids, and so proud of them. They're doing great. And I think Jennifer is also such a great model for that.
That's great. All right. So what year is it that we start Winchester?
So the beginning of 2008.
Okay. So right in the middle of the financial crisis.
So are you
crazy starting a home building company?
Well, we didn't start home building. So it was interesting, Scott, and I'll go kind of to circle back on my father. So when I called my dad in 2007 and told him that I was leaving Pulte. And again, these,
He probably thought you were crazy.
Literally, I've never, my dad.
This is the time where he's like, wait, son, the entrepreneurial thing.
He was like, you are crazy. Yeah. Because, a public home builder and regional presidents, those guys and gals, they are very well compensated.
It's a good job.
They are very well compensated.
It's a good job.
And so when I told my dad was like, son, you are literally crazy. I'm like, I understand, but damn the torpedo. So we started out, Winchester Carlisle started out as a workout firm. So we were fortunate that because of those epicenters being in the Las Vegas market and the Phoenix market, which we had a lot of experience in as well, when we started, we said, hey, at first I thought, like probably a lot of, or not thought, like a lot of people, hey, I'm going to go raise some money and I'm going to buy distressed assets.
Yeah.
Well, in hindsight, we know how that played out. The banks were able to extend to let things play out. Very few things got forced through the system unless it was a syndicated deal. So there was a lot of people that the financial markets and the regulators allowed real estate to elongate and didn't rip the Band-Aid off, which, we can talk about that. I think that was a negative because that's why it took us so long within the market to recover,
right,
as opposed to letting the natural forces work. But so because of my experience in the Vegas market specifically, we were able to start getting business as a workout firm for Credit Suisse, Highland Capital, which was a very large hedge fund. I think they were at their peak were $40 billion hard hedge fund here. We ended up doing, all the business for Credit Suisse, most of the business for Highland Capital, Wells Fargo. We did all the business for Bain Capital, GE Capital, Guarantee Bank. We were doing all the work out for them, Compass BBVA. And so at the time we had, by the time we were peaking in that space, we probably had 60, 70 advisors that were doing projects across, not only in those markets, but in Phoenix and all over the country for Wells Fargo. And so that was a very good, very profitable business for us. And so ultimately what came out of that was there was one of our biggest workouts was for a home builder in Las Vegas. And so imagine this, in 2000, I think it was 6, they closed on this. Credit Suisse, through a syndicated deal, loaned the gentleman who owned that company $325 million. Unsecured. It was secured by the real estate, but allowed him to dividend that 325 day one. That's how crazy the financial structures were at that time. And so they had, and that was all syndicated. Well, surprise, surprise, the operator did a big dividend, the market collapsed, the syndication is now stuck with all of those assets. So it was not only a home builder, but they had a bunch of real estate assets. And so we went through a dog and pony show competing against a lot of other public home builders, and were fortunate enough to be selected as the home building operating partner with Credit Suisse and Highland and GE and Bain to take this home builder out of bankruptcy and then emerge as a new company. Yeah. And so we did that, and in 2010, we emerged as that home builder under the brand Dunhill Homes, which I owned at the time and still own to this day, that brand. And so we took them through and then rebuilt that whole operation. So we had 2 18-hole golf courses and big master plan communities that we continued to develop. And we added product and process and kind of going back to that process stuff that Pulte really burned in, but had a lot of respect for it. And so we did that all the way through 2014, in which we exited that with the sell to Century Communities, which was the last piece before they went public. Yeah. So it was a tremendous financial win for all the people involved, and to the level where literally the head of investment banking for Credit Suisse, when I went post-closing to New York, came and took me out and bought me a beer, and that whole team did, because that was the largest financial win for that group that year. Yeah. So it was a very profitable deal. And then in 2012, I started Dunhill Homes in DFW with no partners. Okay. So we had mirrored that with the approval of obviously that group. And so we had a home building operation that was separate from the one in Vegas, and then we built that and sold that in 2018 to TriPoint, which is a California-based public home builder. Okay.
Great. So what is Winchester today?
So,
Winchester Carlisle.
So kind of one other little thing we did in the interim of all that, when we were doing all the workout stuff, Scott, we figured out that we wanted to be on the sell side, having a real estate brokerage operation. So we started that, and we exited that in 2015 to Century 21. So we had 220 or so realtors working for that in that business. So today, because of when I sold into 2018, I had a non-compete for single family for sale products. So the opportunity that we had was in the build to rent space.
Yeah.
And at that point, we had a real passion for, recognizing the problems, and there was a lot of problems going on within the Dallas market, specifically about people that were, having homes that were basically uninhabitable and leasing those to people. Yeah. And so I got very focused on learning that space. I wanted to try to take all of our production home building experience and buying power and process and try to apply that to building new homes in, markets that, South Dallas, Stop 6 and Fort Worth, and, the more difficult markets in smaller towns. So we embarked upon that effort to build quality homes that would be competitively priced with the home that had been, for 60 and 70 years with no treatment. Instead, we were providing new homes, with, think about energy efficiency. So we would save a resident $80 a month in just electrical and utilities, low-E windows, brand new flooring, washer or a dishwasher. Many of our folks had never even seen it. The people were renting. We were having to train them on dishwashers, things like that. And so it was a financial move, but a passion project in many ways. Lots of learnings on that. Yeah. And many of the learnings, unfortunately, are not ones that are positive, because what we've learned in that space that a lot of people talk about wanting to solve this problem, and unfortunately, our politicians talk about this, but when the rubber meets the road and saying, we need A, B, and C, not financial support, but just, hey, can we have police officers maybe drive by our job sites so we don't get our copper stolen 6 times, or can we put, we literally had to put cages around HVAC, and we would say, hey, we'll put a tracking device on these, so when it's stolen,
we'll go find it. Yeah.
And they're like, yeah, that's not worth our effort. Yeah. We never find those now. So it unfortunately soured us a little bit to it. We own 1,700 rental homes today. It's a great business, but it unfortunately, I think the more financially beneficial market is probably in building more of the horizontal, what we call horizontal apartment communities, as opposed to that business.
Yeah,
but love it. Very passionate about what we've done and the lives we've changed on that, because you really see the data. So when you have like a stacked flat Section 8 project, you have multi-generational families living on top of each other. So you have a grandma with, a mother or a father trying to raise 3 teenagers. That's a very difficult environment for everyone. Yeah. And when you can put them into a stable single family home, especially a new home,
right,
and they can then, really get that consistency in the way they live and and frankly, the pride they have in being in that home. It really is, it changes their lives.
For sure.
And unfortunately, that story has not caught hold, because it's more efficient to build, a multifamily project, which are very powerful and they do a great job. I don't want to discount that, but it's really a very different quality of life that people are experiencing when they can get in a single family.
Yeah, absolutely. So what's next?
So we just
thinking about something next.
For sure. So we've launched our for sale home building business again. We're actively building that platform. And so we're doing that in North Texas and Central Texas. And so that's coming out of the ground now. We think, we'll be to kind of a steady state.
Is that under the Dunhill brand?
That's under the Dunhill brand again. And so we're very actively building that. And now we'll see what these current market conditions play and how we will be able to navigate those, which,
Let's
a
talk
unique
about
time.
that for a second. So tell me your take on what's kind of going on with real estate and markets and interest rates and sort of environment?
Sure. It's a difficult environment for, and I can really only speak about the residential space because that's the only space that I really have deep knowledge in. But we're kind of getting hit on all categories.
Right.
So obviously interest rates have continued to stay high. We've seen that the customer starts to get, back in the game, kind of sub 6%, 5 to 6%. It seems to be a very comfortable place for consumers. I think they recognize the days of, 3% are probably not going to come anytime soon. So they seem to have been getting, so if we look at our Q1 numbers, we had very positive numbers. It wasn't like we were going on a rocket ship, but they were stable. They were healthy. They were, manageable. We could make money. And then, when we had the Liberation Day, it seemed like that changed the dynamics for the consumer confidence. So what we're hearing and seeing from our customers, we're still seeing good traffic, but conversions have dropped substantially. And not only for us, but as you can imagine, all of my peers and the people I talk to in this business and industry, it's a very consistent theme. So, we've got higher interest rates.
Yeah.
We're unknown on the impact of tariffs.
Right.
The estimates are kind of $5,000 to $15,000. So on a production home, that we're selling in the kind of the 300, that as a percentage is a high number compared to, we're already at elevated costs compared to kind of pre-COVID. So we've got that. We're unsure on the impact on labor. When I was coming to work yesterday and listening to the ticket and hearing our home secretary talk about, leave the country and things like that. Our trades are very mindful and do an incredible job of following the rules within the people that they employ, but it just sets a mood, right? And we're already very constrained within the labor market because a large part of our labor is aging out.
Right.
When I go around a job site, I don't see a lot of gray-haired people and the people that own those businesses. And so a lot of those businesses are being bought by private equity that then changes the dynamic. So so we're seeing that front. So we're really kind of getting hit from all four channels: consumer confidence, interest rates, potential cost issues, and then obviously the labor.
Yeah.
So we are in unknown, uncharted waters. And then we're seeing, even within North Texas, and I'm sure you've seen this, I mean, the in-migration numbers are still very healthy, but, we were getting 100,000. We're at a 15-year low in a migration, 50,000, which is still a very good number, by the way.
Yeah.
But it's a more steady state number and below a 15-year trend for DFW.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of complexity that we're managing through. But I will say this, and we're very hopeful, and not even hopeful. We're very confident that, is it the second half of this year? Is it Q1 of next year? Because the fundamentals in home building are still some of the best industry trends of any industry you can compare to. We have underbuilt product for so long. And then we had the affordability lock with people that are locked in. So you're not seeing resale product come on the market like we did. I mean, we were, 4 million, which is a very low number historical. We've been building, on the single family side, 800,000 units.
Yeah.
When you add in multi and all that, but really kind of the meat and potatoes, 800,000 units. Well below the demand curve, what we need just on in-migration, people having kids, life changes, relocations. So we think there's a couple things that will likely happen. We'll see rates come back to us, back half of this year or Q1, depending on what this economy does. That's very positive. There is a lot of talk that within this next tax bill that we could see a first-time homebuyer credit, which we think would be very, very positive. Within Texas, we're seeing a very positive trend to lower property taxes, which, as we all know, is a very difficult tax, especially when you own 1,700 rentals and you got 500 homes under construction at all times. So those are big economic headwinds for us. So as we see and we kind of think about our confidence going forward in the back half of this year and forward, we think it's very, very positive. And this tariff, discussion, this is going to work out. That's the gray hair talking. Right. I'm not panicked about it. We just got to all keep our head down, work with our wonderful trade partners to say, hey, let's all understand we got to have a little margin compression here, but so we can all be here to fight another day.
That's right.
And our expectation is that will continue to trend. Yeah. That'll trend the right way for us.
Good thoughts. All right. So you've shared your incredible arc of your career and just kind of all the places you've been over the last 35, 40 years. We're sitting now in front of an audience of business owners and entrepreneurs. What's one or two sort of takeaways from, your career and the arc of your career that you'd share with, this audience?
Yeah, I think probably the most important thing is curiosity. Yeah. And just always be learning. I am a ferocious reader. I am reading across all trends of all industries and technology and taking classes and constantly challenging myself to learn and always learning, because things that are happening in industries and things and talking to people, one of the things that drives my family and my wife crazy, but if I'm talking to anyone, I'm asking about how their economy's going and what's going on. So I think just having a commitment to learn. Yeah. And the other thing is hire the best people. Yeah. And have humility that you're not the smartest person in the room, and go find the best people, because I'm average at a lot of things, but I have been very good at providing opportunities for other people to shine and to grow and to sit back and push them ahead of me. And so I've take a lot of pride of helping people in their careers. And, when you're 57, you get a lot of those people coming back to you and saying, hey, thank you for this, or, thank you for giving me this opportunity. So I'm often pushing people much faster than they maybe are comfortable with, because, we've been able to recognize that they have a lot of talent. And then I think, kind of a couple other things is just invest in that process. Yeah. Discipline to that process. We still get it wrong. We could be broke tomorrow, but we can go put our head on the pillow tomorrow saying, hey, we have done and put in the infrastructure and hired the best people to be successful. And so I think just having the confidence to push other people ahead of you is very important. So having that humility, I think is kind of mission critical. And then surrounding yourself with people that feed you. Yeah. I think, when I look at times in my career or life where I've kind of been enamored with things that aren't those basic principles. And so today, Jennifer and I are blessed with just great core set of friends that have the same family values that we do, that are all business people, but they're business people because they love the game and they're doing it, but they're not business first. Right. You may never know what they do unless they're happy to talk about it, but they're not introducing themselves as, hey, I'm something here or there. Right. And so I think surrounding yourself with people that keep you grounded and that are willing to say, hey, you're not all you think you are. My wife and kids do a great job of that. But I think that friend group and professionals surrounding yourself is very important.
That's great. Those are great takeaways. Richard, thank you so much.
Thank you.
This is great to spend time with you.
Thanks for having me.
I feel like now I have the full Durag history.
I tell you, there's a lot there.
So it's been great.
There's
Thank
a lot
you for joining us on Decision Points.
Thank you, Scott.